How many of you got that one? Listen to me. One of the reasons why the enemy did not possess any power over Jesus is because there was no wounds in Jesus' soul. Check it out. Jesus Christ came to earth as a man. It says this in Philippians 2, that Jesus, who although being essentially one with God and in the form of God, did not think this equality with God was a thing to be eagerly grasped or retained, but stripped himself of all privileges and rightful dignity so as to assume the guise of a servant slave, in that he became like a man and was born a human being. And after he appeared in human form, he abased and humbled himself still further and carried his obedience to the extreme death on a cross. You see, Jesus Christ came as a man. He had to come as a man without sin, because if he had gone to the cross as anything more than a man, he could not have atoned for us. So Jesus Christ definitely came as a man, which means he was built just like us. He had a body, a soul, and a spirit. Now, we know his spirit was perfect because we get our spirit, our born-again spirit from Jesus Christ, right? But unlike us, so was his soul. His soul was perfect. How do I know? Because there was no sin in Jesus. That's what the Bible says. So there couldn't be any wounds in his soul, right? Because it's sin that forms the wound. So Jesus had no wounding in his soul, so the demonic had no power over him. Listen to proof in John 14. This is Jesus talking. He says this, I will not talk to you much more, for the prince, the evil genius of this world is coming, and he has no claim on me. He has nothing in common with me. There is nothing in me that belongs to him, so he has no power over me. You hear that? One of the reasons why Jesus as a man had dominion over the enemy, because there was nothing in Jesus' soul or his spirit that was in common with the demonic. There was nothing in Jesus' thinking that was in common with Satan, so Satan had no power over him. There was nothing in Jesus' emotions that was in common with the demonic, so the demonic had no power over him. There was nothing in Jesus' will that belonged to Satan, so the dark kingdom had no dominion over him. There was nothing in Jesus' soul that was in common with the kingdom of darkness, so the kingdom of darkness had no authority over him. Now I want you to listen to proof of this from Mark 5. Remember the story of the man with the spirit of legion? Listen to this story. It says that they came to the other side of the sea, to the region of Gerasenes, and as soon as he got out of the boat, there met him a man out of the tombs, under the power of an unclean spirit. This man continually lived among the tombs, and no one could subdue him anymore, even with a chain. For he had been bound often with shackles for the feet and handcuffs, but the handcuffs were apart, and the shackles he rubbed and ground together and broke in pieces. Night and day he was among the tombs, beating and bruising and cutting himself with stones. And when from a distance he saw Jesus, he ran and fell on his knees before him in homage. Now listen to this part. Listen to what this demon says to Jesus. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, what have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? What is there in common between us? I solemnly implore you by God, do not begin to torment me. Do you remember what Jesus said in John 14, right? Prince of this world is coming, but he has nothing in me that's in common with him, so he has no power over me. That spirit of legion recognized there was something different about this man. He recognized that there was nothing in Jesus' soul that was in common with that spirit, so that spirit had no legal right to torment Jesus. In fact, Jesus could torment that spirit. That's why that spirit said, Jesus, what is there in common between us? I solemnly implore you, do not begin to torment me. Torment me. Are you with me? Now check it out. There's two men in this story, Jesus Christ. By the way, that spirit calls him the Son of Man, right? Because he recognizes. Hold on. Son of the Most High God, right? Because he recognizes this was the only human being that he'd run up against that didn't have any wounds in his soul. So he must be the Son of God. Do you see it? Whew. So here's the one man in the story, Jesus, but there's another man in the story, right? The man who's totally under the control of the spirit of legion, right? How come this guy was able to be controlled by legion? What was giving legion the legal right to afflict that man? It was the wounds in his soul. Let me prove it to you. Do you remember? Let me skim it to you. I'm just going to skim through. In Mark 5 again, says this, verse 2, as soon as Jesus got out of the boat, there met him out of the tombs a man under the power of an unclean spirit. Verse 3, this man continually lived among the tombs. Verse 5, night and day he was among the tombs. When I read that, I thought, boy, sure does say tombs a lot. That must mean something. So I did a little research on that word in the Greek. That word tombs actually means to recall or to remember. It also, yeah, right. She got it right away. It also means a monument set up to cause a perpetual remembrance. That's what a soul wound is, ladies and gentlemen. It is a monument set up inside your mind that causes your mind to be perpetually affected by that event that happened to you years and years ago. It's a monument set up inside your emotions that causes your emotions to be constantly controlled by that event that happened to you all that way back. All that way back. That's what a soul wound is. It causes you to remember, to recall, to be constantly and perpetually controlled and affected by the horrible thing that happened to you in your past, whether you realize it or not. That man was able to be under the control of the spirit of legion because he lived among the tombs. He lived among the woundedness of his past. And because those wounds were created by sin, it gave that spirit of legion the legal right to afflict him. Let me tell you a story. As I began to understand this, as the Lord began to reveal this to me, I realized that this was a whole new way for us to take whole new levels of dominion over the demonic. By having the wounds in our soul healed. And I had a very practical encounter with this biblical truth when I was on tour. I was in Oklahoma City. I was about to go to my very first meeting. And the night before, I had a dream. I dreamed that I was cooking meth. Now, some of you know me, some of you don't. But I did 5 years in federal prison, and amongst the many crimes I committed I was a meth cook. I used to have a portable laboratory that I took all over the place, and I would cook methamphetamines. So I'm having this dream that I'm cooking meth. And I wake up in the morning and I go, haven't done that for over a decade. Gee, wonder why you're telling me that specifically today, Lord. Because see, I believe that when God gives you a dream, it's not coincidence that he's talking to you. And I didn't understand why at the moment, but I just believed by faith that God was giving me that dream at that particular second for a specific reason. And I believed that he was telling me that I had a wound in my soul. Because how many of you know that, baby? Okay? And so I had sinned against myself by being a meth cook, and it had formed a wound on my soul. And so by faith I said, Lord, I believe you're telling me that you want to deal with that wound today, this morning. So I'm going to soak it in the light of Jesus. So I began to do that, and it only took me 15 minutes, and I saw like a lightning strike, and I knew I got the healing. So then we're getting ready to go. We get in the car, we get down to the place we're supposed to minister at. I walk into the room I'm going to do ministry in, and in the spirit, I could smell the chemicals used to cook meth. And I know what they smell like. And I thought, well, this is more than coincidence, which I don't believe in. So I went to the woman who was doing the meeting, and I told her about my dream, and I told her what I sensed in the spirit when I walked in. And she goes, well, just so happens that before we acquired this building, that this room was used as a meth lab. Do you understand? Do you understand what was happening? God knew that I needed to have total dominion in that room that day. So the night before, he, through a dream, showed me the wound that was in my soul that was created from my sin, so that I could get it healed in the light of Jesus. And then when I got it healed, I could walk into that meeting and have a whole new level of dominion, total dominion over that room. And signs and wonders broke out in that meeting. A woman even began to get healed of bipolar disease. Wow, I'm telling you what, this is the coolest tool for evangelists, for ministers, for people that just are praying for their family and going out on the streets. This is a whole new way to have a level of dominion. I mean, when I was on tour, I used to despise going on tour, and now I love it. And I tell you why. Because when you go on tour, it puts you on an accelerated path of getting healing in your soul. Because every place we went to, and we had like 20 dates in just one state, and we were going to 2 states during that tour. 20 dates in one state. Every new venue I would go to, the night before, the Lord would show me what was in my soul that was in common with the demonic powers that were over that church. Yes, and I would get a healing in the light of Jesus and walk in there, and signs and wonders and angelic and the things of the kingdom of heaven would manifest because